everyone. Thank you for joining us. We are the Teen Librarians with Arapahoe Libraries. I'm Lauren, and we have Catherine and Bridget with us as well. And today we're going to be telling you about books that we recommend for eighth grade readers. And I'm going to kick us off with our first book called All These Monsters. And All These Monsters is a really good mashup of The Maze Runner meets Divergent. It definitely has that feel, especially when the monsters start popping up randomly around the town. It reminds me a lot of the monsters that were in The Maze Runner. Except for in this one, there's a group of people that are trying to compete to form teams in the different cities in order to battle these monsters and save people. And Clara is one of those people that really wants to help fight back. At home, she has a really rough time with her abusive father, and she's looking for a way to channel that anger and help other people as well. While she's on the weaker side of the group, she does make the cut in order to make it on these teams, on one of the teams. And once they are in training, it becomes very clear that there's something not right about the teams. They seem to be more in competition with each other than the end goal, especially when it comes to the team that Clara's on. There's something about the leader of her team that she is unsure about. He seems to be spending special attention with her, helping her out in different ways. And so she is trying to kind of battle between sticking up for her team lead because she thinks that he's a pretty good guy. He's been helping her in things, but also trying to find out the truth behind the monsters. There seems to be something that isn't right about kind of where they're popping up, why they're popping up, and things like that. So, if you want something that will keep you on the edge of your seat, the attacks are crazy because you don't know when they're going to happen. There's a lot of really good team building, also personal building, trying to figure out where you're on the team. I really enjoyed All These Monsters, and it's the first in the series. So I look forward to the next one.
So the first book that I'm going to talk about is a graphic novel, and this one is Namesake. And I picked this up because I really loved the cover. The art is gorgeous in this. It's a series, and it started as a webcomic. So if you want to try it out, you can find it online as well. And this follows Emma. She's the main character. She's got a younger sister. And one day, they're at the library. Something happens, something goes wrong, and Emma finds herself kind of pulled into another world. She shows up where Wizard of Oz. She shows up in Oz, and she is sort of, everyone around her is referring to her as the Dorothy, but with the before it, the Dorothy. And what she kind of is learning, and was you learn as you kind of go through, is that the namesakes are people who kind of get pulled into other worlds, like Alice in Wonderland and Jack the Beanstalk and Wizard of Oz, and you sort of take on the role of the namesake character, and you sort of perform the tasks, right, till you fulfill the story. But Emma's name is not Dorothy, and when you get chosen as a namesake, it's usually because your name is the same name as the character. She's an Emma, not a Dorothy. And so this is sort of this mystery adventure story set in this almost sort of, it's not really a retelling of these fairy tales and stories, but it kind of dips into them in different ways and reimagines them. And then there's the mystery on the other side. Her sister is left behind, and the two stories are happening simultaneously. Emma trying to figure stuff out, her sister trying to find her. It's really interesting, it's kind of funny, and it has all of those blends of from the other stories inside. So it's one that I highly recommend, and if you like it, you'll probably want to read more in the series. So give it a try.
My first recommendation is actually probably one of my favorite books that I've read this year. It's called Cemetery Boys by Aidan Thomas. The main characters are Yadriel and Julian. Yadriel is a brujo, so he is a witch. And Julian is a ghost, and they meet at the beginning of the story. What you find out is that Yadriel is part of a family of brujos who have been charged with protecting this graveyard for many, many years. They protect the ancestors and others. And when you reach a certain age, you go through a ceremony. Yadriel has not been allowed to go through the ceremony because he is trans, and his family doesn't believe that he can complete it. He decides that he is going to prove them all wrong, and he does it on his own. So he goes through the ceremony. Essentially, you have to perform this rite, summon a ghost, and help them pass on. And he manages to summon Julian, but now he can't get him to go away. Julian is haunting Yadriel. And what to make matters worse, Julian doesn't believe that he's really dead because he can vividly remember being alive as recently as an hour ago. So there's this mystery surrounding what has happened to him. And then shortly after this happens, Yadriel's cousin goes missing, which creates this panic within the family. And so he is now having to hide the fact that he has, in fact, successfully summoned a ghost. He can't get rid of the ghost, and his cousin's missing. So that all of these things are kind of building towards this climax. It is so much fun. I love the relationship that builds between Yadriel and Julian as the story goes on. It is definitely a great choice if you're looking for something a little darker and spooky to read this Halloween season, or even after if you like things that are scary. This one's not so scary that you can't enjoy it, but it definitely has its moments. And that is Cemetery Boys.
Awesome. So my next recommendation is a bit lighter. It's called Turning Point. And I really enjoyed this one. If you have read other books by Paula Chase, like the So Done series, this one is a standalone book, but it will have the similar characters in those books as well. So if you like those, you'll really like this one as well. Like I said, this one's standalone. It's a realistic story still. It's told in dual perspectives from two best friends about their summer. And Monique, or Mo, as her friends call her, is accepted to a prestigious, mostly white ballet initiative or intensive program. And she is super excited, but when she gets there, she realizes that she might not fit in as well as she thought. She's one of the only ones that has gotten there by scholarship, but she was good enough to get in. So she's hoping that everyone will see that her talent. She's kind of skeptical that they will see past that. But she keeps pursuing it, and she keeps checking with her friend Sheeta, who is at home still. And Sheeta's helping out with her aunt's BBS at the church and working through all the different things that come with her summer. There's a lot of hiccups that are happening. One thing that is kind of tearing her from wanting to talk to Mo is she's starting to form a crush on Mo's brother, which has never happened before. So she's not really sure what Mo would think about it and things like that. So if you want something that's realistic, it has ballet in it. The way they describe how she is with ballet, it's fantastic with Mo. And then with Sheeta and her summer, how it's going with helping with children and then this crush happening. There's a lot of heavy topics that are talked about throughout it. I'll be honest about that. But the humor and the way that they're processing everything that's happening throughout their summer is fantastic. I really enjoyed it. So again, that's Turning Point.
And my next book is Anna Dressed in Blood. This one is a little bit older, but it's a really good choice if you're looking for a kind of haunting, kind of gory ghost story. And so it follows our main character, Cass. He is a high school student, and he is traveling with his mom. He and his mom live together, and they are moving to a new town. Specifically, they're moving to this town because one of the things that Cass does is he like basically hunts various ghosts, monsters, poltergeists, whatever you want to call them, and sort of sends them on to somewhere else. He has a blade that he uses, and it helps him kind of banish them to ? And this particular myth, this particular person, ghost that he's coming for, is the legend is that she's a teenage girl. Her name was Anna, and in the 50s, I think it was, she was murdered. Her throat was slit, and she was murdered. And now the house where she used to live is the site of terrible things. So he gets to the town, and he's sort of figuring things out, figuring out the lay of where things are, making friends with students at the school to try and figure out the stories, like what are the myths about her. And then he ends up at a party, and the party, they end up at Anna's house, and he finds himself inside. And from there, things go spectacularly wrong in a very, very gory manner. So just know that there's a lot of murder, death in this book. It's a true horror story. And this is sort of the story of what happens from that point. Like, what is Anna? What's going on with this house? And how is he going to get himself and perhaps the rest of the town out of it? Really entertaining. I really like the writing here. If you don't mind some, gory things, this would be a good fall read.
My next recommendation is This Is My Brain in Love by I.W. Gregorio. I'll admit I was a little skeptical when I first picked this up. On the surface, it looks very much like it's going to be a fluffy, light, romantic comedy, which I do sometimes enjoy, but it was definitely so much more than that. At the beginning of the story, you meet Jocelyn Wu, who works with her family in a Chinese restaurant. Her father and mother are Chinese immigrants, and they have been working, kind of scraping by all these years, trying to make this restaurant successful. And she is thrown together with Will, who is their summer intern, and they have essentially been tasked with trying to turn the business around, help it make money, because if they're not able to, Jocelyn and her family are going to lose the restaurant, and they're going to have to move back to the New York City where they came from originally before she moved out here. And it's her last year of high school. She doesn't want to have to change schools. She's really desperate to try to change this. So on the surface, yes, it looks like it's going to be this really neat, cute, romantic comedy. But what it also is, in addition to that, is one of the most realistic portrayals that I have ever read of characters dealing with anxiety and depression in a very relatable way. And there were passages where I read that and it just resonated really strongly, some of those conflicting internal emotions and the conversations that they were having. And so that's actually what I loved most about this book. It was a fun romance as they got to know one another, but really as the two characters start to support one another and confront these mental health issues that they have, that is where the story really gains a lot of depth and much more meaning for me, and is one that made it stick with me much longer than I think it would have ordinarily. So this is My Brain in Love. I highly recommend it.
Awesome. So my last recommendation is Pumpkinheads, and it is the cutest graphic novel that I've read lately. I really enjoyed it. It is by Rainbow Rowell. If you're not familiar with her, she is the author of Eleanor and Park, among other books. But it's super cute, and it is about two best friends, Deja and Josiah. She calls them Josie, and they have worked on a pumpkin patch every year since being high school. And now that they're seniors, it's their last night at the pumpkin patch. And as they're working together, they've always worked the same booth every year. They're not friends during the year. They're only friends like in the fall, even though they seem like best friends. And so they're getting to know each other again and catching each other up every year as they kind of reunite at this booth. And it turns out that Josie has not talked to a crush that he's had the whole time. Her name's Marcy. She works at the fudge shop at this pumpkin patch. And so Deja has taken upon herself to make a plan to make that conversation happen. And so it is their story of how they pretty much ignore work for the night and enjoy themselves. Usually, Josiah is the kind of lead of the group. He's the one that's on the wall for Employee of the Month every month and things like that. And so he is kind of like skeptical. He's not sure they should be doing it, but along the way you could see him kind of start to relax and enjoying what is actually around. There's all these different places. I mentioned the fudge shop, but they also have like a s'more pit. Like, it sounds like such a blast. And the food, you're definitely going to need snacks for this one, because the food descriptions, it sounds delicious. So if you want something that's fun, it does kind of, it's more of a fall book, but I would read it any time of the year. It's super fun, super cute. If you like that kind of pumpkin patch maze kind of feel, I would highly recommend Pumpkinheads.
And so my last book that I'm going to talk about is nonfiction, and it's called She Came to Slay. It's about Harriet Tubman. And you may, if you are like me, sometimes with really, really well-known, really famous historical figures, you might think to yourself, why do I want to read a book about them? I know about them. And in this case, I would recommend, if you have even the slightest bit of interest, picking this up, because one of the things that I think this book does so well is that it gives you her story in a really immediate, kind of intimate sort of way, so that you get to know her as a person and not as Harriet Tubman, you know, the Black Moses leading her people free, the lines, the sort of the things that we hear, which are accurate, but they don't feel necessarily like someone you might meet on the street. They feel kind of like historical figures. So this book does a really good job of breaking down the lines, giving you all of the details, lots of stuff about just what a fascinating person she was. There are so many stories that don't make it into the kind of history that we hear about. And the other thing that I really like about this book, it was written for adults. It is not a teen book per se, but I think it has a lot of crossover, because a lot of the work that she did, she was really young. She was a teenager. She was like in her early 20s. And this book combines this wonderful sort of art style with all of this information that's fascinating about her life. So if you're looking for a really good sort of biography of someone, this one has a different style in a way that I think works really, really well. And if you want to kind of look at history through a lens of what's happening in our country today, I think this book would also be a good choice for you as well. So give it a try.
I'm going to wrap us up with a book that I found a little unexpected. It's called Last Girls by Demetra Brodsky. And I kind of thought I was going into a dystopian, I'm not quite sure what I expected, but it is a fascinating, twisty thriller that sucks you in, and you just have to keep reading it until you finish and find out what happens. It follows three sisters, the Juniper sisters, so it's a sister story, which I love. And so Honey, Blue, and Birdie have grown up moving from one place to another, and in recent years their mom has settled them down in a doomsday prepper commune, and they have been training for all of these different end of the world scenarios, and they carry what they call an everyday carry that has all kinds of supplies in it that you should need should any disaster strike. And the story actually starts off when the alarm is sent out in their school that there is a shooter on the premises. So it starts with an active shooter threat, and they immediately go into action mode. They have a plan. They are supposed to meet somewhere. But what you find out is that one of these sisters has been pulled by some other boys who live in the commune with them into this plot, and they are actually the active threat right now in this school. And everything escalates from there. It is a fascinating story as these different twists and secrets start to unfold about what's going on in this commune and why are these young women being pulled into this? Where did they come from? What's happening with them? I highly recommend it. It's such a satisfying story. So if you're looking for a great thriller, Last Girls is a great choice.
Awesome. Thank you all for joining us. That is the end of our book talks for 8th grade, and we'll see you next time.